Good morning, Professor Zuckermann.
Good morning, Boaz.
Well,
It's a great pleasure to be here with you. I'm in Adelaide, South Australia.
we are here in Bangkok, hoping to see you soon here in Asia with us, where things are more normal.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
let's jump immediately into the deep water to save us some time.
Yes.
We are basically going to talk a little bit about AI and the linguistic problems or possibilities that AI is bringing. And I want to start with a flashback. 5 years ago, when we were working on the book, The Art of Creation, you shocked me. I was shocked and appalled when you said that the best language of creation is legalese, the language of lawyers, because technically it is the most clear, concise, and accurate way to describe things and therefore to create things that have any, let's say, programmed meaning, that are not just random and throwing paint on canvas. If you need to plan something, if you need to build something, legalese. You know. Now, I, as a poet, as an artist, was well, I considered blocking you and cutting all connection, but it seems that because I come from the world of inspiration and vague ideas and concepts which open and make you feel. And 5 years later, and here we are standing in front of the abyss, the AI abyss, where everything is changing. And in fact, your prediction became accurate. When we need to talk to AI, we need to talk in legalese, in very simple facts, in very simple instructions. And I think that that is extremely sad. First, because I was wrong, and that is something that should never happen in this world. I do not agree for this thing. But other than that, we do lose a lot of the emotional impact, a lot of the freedom, a lot of the improvisational mind games that we have when we need to recreate in our brain things that are not very clear. And suddenly we have to take from our experience, we have to take from our imagination. When we handle AI, we don't have all that. Now, before we start discussing this, let me see if I got it right, the situation. As a linguistic professor, 50,000 years ago, there were some hairy creatures sitting around a campfire, and one of them was going, goo, 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 ah, ah, goo, boo, boo, doo, doo. And the other people in their minds saw a big animal that is running, and he do ba 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 yee 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 yee, and they saw people running. He was telling the words, they were seeing the images, and they got the story. Basically, we arrived at the same place. Is that more or less what is happening?
Well,
Storytelling.
yeah, I mean, look, firstly, the I have a couple of things to say. Firstly, about the last point you made about the what I call the first linguistic revolution, which is the emergence of speech. As I see, there have been four linguistic revolutions: speech, writing, type printing, and the technological AGI, ASI, AI, whatever you want to call it, revolution, which we are practically part of. But let's begin with the first revolution, which you've just mentioned. The first revolution, which is the emergence of speech, happened at least 70,000 years ago in Africa, at least. I don't know exactly when. I don't think anybody knows right now exactly when, but of course we might eventually find out exactly when. But what speech allowed us, as opposed to animals, is to lie about the past and to lie about the future. Animals can lie about the present, but no animal can tell you 10 years ago I shagged 10 lionesses, and in 15 years from now I will have had 50 little babies. I mean, it's impossible for an animal to say, whereas a human can say that, I mean, can tell you that because of speech. So speech allows us exactly the imagination that you're talking about, the imagination of the past, about the past, and the imagination about the future. So this is a huge revolution without which we would have never had poets like you around. Now, when it comes to writing, of course, oh, by the way, the first revolution also allowed us to offend without any physical violence, which is an amazing advantage. I mean, if you think about it, I can offend somebody easily, especially these days when everybody is on edge. You know, you just tell somebody something, you trigger, and then they want to kill you. You know, so this is something that, of course, speech allows us to do. The animals cannot offend, cannot say like "fuck you," you know. Anyway, or your sister is whatever. The second linguistic revolution was writing, and this allowed us to protect ourselves against thieves, because of course writing emerged in Iraq or Mesopotamia when they sent some wheat to Israel, and in return they received half of the quantity. There was an investigation, and they found out that there were thieves on the way, and then they said, okay, we will write down, probably in Sumerian or whatever, we will write down 4 units of wheat, and that's the beginning of writing. It's an economic invention. It's an economically driven linguistic invention. And I don't know if, I mean, if I'm charitable, if I look at the half glass full, I would argue that such an economically driven linguistic revolution gave rise to the most sublime poems or whatever. So this is the second revolution. The third linguistic revolution is type printing. You're in Asia, there were in China some type printers, but we in Europe usually know about Johannes Gutenberg, the end of the 15th century, and this allowed mass indoctrination of religion, because you can send the New Testament to a Pacific island without even sending the priest. They just read the, you know, like thousands, millions of books. And now we are getting to AI, AGI, artificial general intelligence, ASI, artificial superintelligence. I'm very happy to hear what I told you 5 years ago, because in fact, and if I build upon what you've perspicaciously said, AI, AGI, ASI proves itself to be extremely good with creativity, with creative art, with creative, so also visual art, but I mean films, and also poems, etc. So what I'm trying to say is that although it is obviously based on a language that is parallel to what 5 years ago I told you, legalese, which is kind of one-to-one correlation between signifiers and signified. You know, everything is clear. When I write my expert witness reports to the federal court, there is no ambiguity. The moment there is ambiguity, that's horrific for the court, because then, you know, lawyers can make a career out of ambiguity. I mean, you look at the Israeli Declaration of Independence. there is a sentence there, mitoch bitachon betzur Israel. Now, this sentence is ambiguous on purpose because the religious signers of the Declaration of Independence, they understood mitoch bitachon betzur Israel as out of faith in God, because bitachon used to mean faith, faith in the divine presence, and tzur Israel is in the Bible, it's like God. Whereas the secular people understood the very same expression as out of security, bitachon, like Sarah Bitachon is Minister of Security. Before the war, he doesn't go and pray to God. You know, this is the Hebrew meaning, but not the Israeli meaning, which is security. And tzur Israel, they understood it as like, you know, F-16s, eventually airplanes, Merkava, which is a tank, etc. So like out of security and strength of the security forces, etc. So this ambiguity was intended, it was deliberate, because this was how you could convince two sides to sign the same agreement. By the way, sometimes when you sign a treaty, you can see that the translation into the local language or whatever was different from the actual original English or whatever original. So what I'm trying to say is that what we see with AI is that AI can write poems, and eventually it would take over in the sense that you will be able to send a poem written by AI to let's say, a literary magazine, and nobody with the right mind would say, oh, I don't like this poem because it is AI. Because, I mean, they wouldn't have no idea. I mean, I have a friend called Edgar Keret, and he's a writer in Israel, and he told me when ChatGPT kind of came to being like 2 years ago or something, he said that two short stories were written by AI, but by Edgar Keret. So practically the AI wrote the story as if it were Edgar Keret. And he said that he was surprised how accurate and how beautifully written these two stories were. The only problem was that he did not have, he said that they didn't have like an injury. He said srita in Israeli, which means like a scar. Like, why did they write it? Did they write it because they have a gap between the teeth, you know, and they have like some kind of scar, some trauma? Or why did they write? So this was missing. But then I told him that the next generation of AI, ASI, you will just be able to select plus minus injury or plus minus psychological motive.
It already exists.
It already
It
exists.
already exists. I can tell you that first, we don't need to wait for the next generation, because I've seen what AI is writing and what AI is creating visually. It is as good or better than any human ever created. And there is absolutely no way to know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you could know that it's an AI because AI could never get the hand right. So if you had a picture of a person, he will have 7 fingers or 3 hands or something.
Yeah, yeah.
It also happened in writing, but these days, not only there is no difference, and the quality, visually the quality is, I've seen things that I have this current post that I keep on repeating on Facebook, which is humans are redundant, number 34,223. Every day I give another example of why humans are redundant. But when it comes to AI, there's two things. First, it is all fake. The poems, as Edgar said, and I used to like Edgar's stories when I was 20. Thank God I grew out of it. And What he said was the pretentiousness of human, what is the word? Not pride. What do the gods punish you for?
Uh,
Hubris.
hubris, or
So
yes,
he
hubris with
thinks,
a U, or
yeah,
yeah, hubris.
or Hebrews with a Hebrew. And he believes
Yes,
that his flaws are what makes him special. Now, it is a
right.
very juvenile way of looking at life. And again, I think that everybody should have this view when you're 20 something. Like my mother used to say, my late mother used to say, if you're not a socialist when you're 20 years old, you don't have a heart. And if you're still a socialist when you're 40 years old, you don't have a brain.
Yes, what is interesting here is that in Hebrew, the heart, not in Israeli, but in Hebrew, the ancient language of the Bible, the heart is where the brain is. So chasar lev means, so heartless, literally, it means an idiot, a fuckwit. Whereas nowadays, chasar lev means somebody who has no emotions, who is a psychopath or evil.
But today we've put the heart above the head, which is nice if you have a responsible adult in the room. But going back to the creation, to the AI,
Yes.
the fact that it is fake, the fact that AI wrote a poem about his heartbroken experience when his teenage love left him,
Yes.
without having this experience, does it make the poem less worthy? I think that not, because I think that we are fake. I think that
Absolutely.
all of we,
Oh, I mean, let me give you an example just right now. So, as you know, on the 14th of December, um, uh, which is several days ago in Bondi, there was a massacre of 15 Jewish people. I was there just several days before it happened. Unfortunately, I know some of the injured and I knew some of the victims. You cannot imagine how many condemnation notices, messages I saw from organizations that are actually directly or indirectly responsible for the amazing growth of anti-Semitism in Australia. So, I mean, fake. There was a very lovely article written by Yoni Bashan, and he talked about there's the Greens and the somebody who is a complete anti-Semite, a professor from Sydney who published a condemnation. I mean, absolutely true. So fake. Who is more fake? Like somebody who writes an article, um, for example, at a university just because they need to write an article in order to be promoted, but they don't really care too much about it. But they need to write an article and to publish it in this journal. It's also fake. I mean, what's the difference between that and an AI that produces an article that goes to the best journal in the world and everybody thinks it. So, I mean,
but
I agree with you.
you are thinking on higher levels,
Yes.
on politics and academics. I'm talking about the basic, does this dress make me look fat? Or waking up in the morning, looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, I'm going to make it. Today is going to be a good day. Everything is going to go my way. I can do this. I've done this before. I will go through this day. This is also, we lie to ourselves all the time. I mean, I'm a very good liar. I'm a professional liar as a writer, as a creative, as an artist. I can give you 20 minutes dissertation about why pizza is diet food because it's really, really flat.
It reminds me that during the coronavirus, I talked to an old Jewish woman from America, and I asked her, "So, what do you give your husband?" I heard he was inflicted with coronavirus. What do you give him in the morning? What do you feed him in the morning? So, well, in the morning I give him a matzah. You know, matzah is for Passover. It's like the flat bread that is very, very thin, and with butter and some salt. He likes butter and salt on matzah. Okay, what about the lunch? So, for lunch I give him matzah, again matzah, with some pastrami, you know, on top. I mean, they're not kosher. Okay, and with some cucumber, you know, like pickled cucumber. And what about the dinner? I asked her, supper. And said, well, for supper, I give him matzah with some jam, like strawberry jam, etc. And so I said, well, but is he happy with all these matzot, all these matzahs that you are giving him? So she said, well, that's the only thing that I can put under the door, you know, like because he's a coronavirus, inflicted by coronavirus. So you reminded me of that when you talked about the pizza. Now, what you said about lying very much corresponds with what I said about the first revolution, linguistic revolution, because this is exactly what we can do that animals cannot. We can lie. So yeah.
There is, by the way, I don't know if you know, there's a beautiful film by Ricky Gervais called The Invention of Lying. In case you
Wow.
haven't seen it, very, very clever, very, very, again, comedians
Yes.
usually are more profound than most other creative people because they don't give a fuck. They can say what they want, and especially people like Ricky Gervais that has enough money. That is, money is freedom. But let's go back to our AI story and the lying. So
Yeah,
I
but
my point.
before we go back, I'll just tell you about the comedy and about the Ghal. You said about kind of self faults, and it's kind of juvenile, but it's like many humans when they're young, they think that their psychological problems are of interest to anybody, but it's also very Jewish to self-deprecate. So most Jewish jokes I know are based on self-deprecation. So I think that the you know the fact that he says that nobody, you know, why did he write it? Was it because of a gap in that, you know, this kind of self-deprecation is not only the youth, but it's also very Jewish, I think. So. You know the difference between the Frenchman, the German, and the Jew. The Frenchman says, I'm tired and thirsty, I must have wine. The German says, I'm tired and thirsty, I must have beer. The Jew says, I'm tired and thirsty, I must have diabetes. So this kind of self-deprecation is something that you cannot find in Australia, in the Anglo-Celtic tradition. Usually Australians laugh at the expense of the other. They do not laugh at themselves. You do find it, by the way, with Aboriginal Australians. They often laugh at their own expense, at their own stupidities, at their own things.
The people who do the kicking don't need that kind of humor. The people who are being kicked need this kind of humor to survive.
Exactly.